Hey guys, it's your pal Victor here, and we just watched episode 5 of Loki, Journey into Mystery. So we're going to talk about that right now. So yeah, this episode pretty much picks up right where the last episode ended, which saw Loki, we thought had been killed, pruned. Pruning actually means you're sent to this nebulous dimension called the Void, where all instances of divergent, time variant Lokis are sent to be annihilated by this purple cloud monster called Alioth. Which we find out because Loki is saved by a small contingent of Lokis, consisting of Kid Loki, Alligator Loki, Boastful Loki, and Classic Loki, who kind of save our variant Loki and take him to their hideout. The fun thing about this is as they go down the hatch to their little hideout, there's a bunch of cool Easter eggs going on here. You see an instance of Mjolnir just laying there buried amongst a ton of cafeteria lunch trays. And if you go a little further down, you actually see the Thor bullfrog, Throg, in a jar trying to escape itself. That's a fun little Easter egg right there. But yeah, we get a little background on each of the Lokis. We find out that Classic Loki, the one that looks like a 1960s comic book Loki, he lived the exact same life as all the other MCU Lokis, except when Thanos arrived in his ship amongst the Asgardian refugees from the end of Thor Ragnarok, this Loki created a super powerful projection of himself, so real that it fooled Thanos, while the real Loki turned himself into floating space debris to survive. Now, the cool thing about this is this also gives an out for there to be actually a real Loki that survives the events of the Infinity Saga if our friend here, Time Variant Loki, does not. So that's some clever future planning here. And it's been noted that this season was show run by one of the writers from Rick and Morty, and my God, does this really feel like a Rick and Morty episode, especially after season 5 episode 2 where there's all the variant decoy Ricks. This kind of feels like that, especially as the Lokis banter amongst themselves. It turns out that Boastful Loki has sold out this crew of Lokis to another group of Lokis that are led by President Loki. That image we've seen all along of, Loki with the giant vote for Loki button and the horns. And they end up having a big Loki standoff and just kind of destroying themselves. But Kid Loki, Alligator Loki, Loki Time Variant, and Classic Loki all escape this, and they're frustrated. It's like, why, there's all this, all these Lokis, they always try to better themselves and they're sent here, and then the rest of them just turn on each other and they're invariably broken. And Richard E. Grant is really awesome as Classic Loki, even though this is pretty much the only episode he's in minus a tiny cameo at the end. He makes the most of it, and I really dug his take on an older, just kind of frustrated Loki. And Kid Loki is kind of awesome here as well. The other thing we get here is the standoff between Sylvie and Judge Renslayer, where Renslayer, Miss Minutes claim they have a ship that can fly through the void, and we find out that basically the TVA, all they do is anytime they get an instance of a time variant, they send them down to this void, which is the void at the end of time. That basically is the ultimate Nexus event. Nothing, everything can exist there because it's the end of time, and the end of time is still being written. And all that Sylvie wants essentially is for Judge Renslayer to kind of tell her who's really the puppet master at the end of this whole thing, because clearly these robots aren't. And she offers, oh, we have this prototype shift that can go to the end of time. And a few minutes in, Sylvie realizes it's bullshit, and then like 4 other TVA guys run in to kind of help Renslayer kind of have her last stand. And Sylvie prunes herself because she realizes, well, you didn't die from this. It's basically just a transporter rod. And she steals Judge Renslayer's time pad as well, which, well, it doesn't come into play in this episode. I'm sure it'll probably come into play. Well, actually, it does come into play in this episode. Negate that. Because once Sylvie lands in the void, she runs right into Alioth, this cloud monster, destroys and eats all matter, the ultimate eraser. And she's running away. She gets a little flash when she does this sort of enchantment energy, but then she's saved by Mobius, who has a Sonny's Pizza delivery truck. And it's kind of cool here because the two, she gets in the car and they kind of bond a little bit, and they realize that Loki, that Sylvie came because she thought she could find Loki, and clearly the Sylvie-Loki relationship blossoms a lot in this episode. Mobius is completely turned on the TVA here, and eventually they end up running into Loki and his gang of Lokis, who've decided that they are going to kill Alioth, and they're just waiting for the moment to happen. And while they're waiting, there's another timed up instance, and the USS Eldridge shows up, and this is like a nice nod to another piece of folklore about this ship, the USS Eldridge, that apparently time traveled and dimension hopped as the Philadelphia experiment, I think back in the 40s. And they shoot their cannons at it, everything, nothing hurts Alioth. And then suddenly the Lokis are all like, well, maybe there's another way to do this. And that's when Sylvie shows up, and her plan is she's going to enchant Alioth. But she needs Loki's help to do it. And then all the Lokis kind of band up together. And then we end up in a scenario where classic Loki and Kid Loki agree they're going to help our Loki variant and Sylvie enchant this Alioth the best they can. Classic Loki kind of has like a hero moment in here, and Kid Loki gives Loki his weapons, like, you're gonna need this, and it's a golden blade. And if you're a comic fan, you know that Kid Loki's sword is a sliver of the Twilight Sword. And if you've seen Thor Ragnarok, the Twilight Sword is the giant sword that Surtur has, that he uses to destroy Asgard once his crown is bound together with the eternal flame. So this is a nice shout out, and you can tell this is part of the sword of Surtur, because when Loki wields it, it sets on fire just like Surtur does. Of course, it's a small. Think about it as like in Game of Thrones when they took Ned Storm's sword Ice and made it into a bunch of smaller swords, including the one for Joffrey. It's not as strong as the original sword, but it's still a pretty mighty weapon. So while Sylvie's trying to lure this creature to its enchantment, Loki's trying to create a distraction with his flaming Twilight Sword, but it's not really doing anything. And this is when classic Loki has his big hero moment, and he uses his powers to create a projection of Asgard for Alioth to destroy. And it's really cool, and one of those scenes where you really get, like, we're really seeing the budget on screen here, and it looks very convincing, and Sylvie realizes then, Loki realizes and tells Sylvie, we're all more powerful than we realize we are. And Sylvie realizes, well, she can't enchant the Alioth on its own. With Loki's help, they can. It's sort of like Guardians of the Galaxy, where they all hold hands to kind of their combined energy. So the combined energy of Sylvie and Loki are enough to enchant the Alioth, but not before classic Loki has a very cool cinematic death where he's like cackling and yelling glorious purpose just as the Alioth consumes him. And once they enchant the Alioth, it opens up a path to basically proving Sylvie was right, that the Alioth is just a guard dog for the real person behind all this at the end of time. And we see this mansion right behind the Alioth as it spreads across, and that's sort of where the episode ends. There's also some interactions between Hunter B-15 and Renslayer, and how, you know, she's trying to get some more info, like why did, you know, you help the variant and all that jazz. And then afterwards, Judge Renslayer hits up Miss Minutes to get everything on the TVA, because she realizes the person who really created it is in danger from the Lokis. And that's kind of where we leave off with her. So here's theory time. All right, in the comic books, Alioth, this energy consuming monster, is the guard dog of Kang the Conqueror. We also know in the comic books, Judge Renslayer, her husband is Kang the Conqueror. We also know from the comic books that there is a group called the Council of Kangs that was ruled by the one prime Kang, because Kang is Kang the Conqueror goes throughout time and space to kind of reshape the timeline to where he can come to power overall as the one true Kang and rule over time and, you know, all realities. And he had a group called the Council of Kangs in the comics, which was led by Kang, that basically was supposed to eliminate all the divergent Kangs in the multiverse, so that Prime Kang, the one true Kang, his destiny to end with him becoming a character called Immortus, right? So basically, this is what I'm thinking. The TVA is really this Council of Kangs led by that, you know, either Kang or Immortus, which are the same character essentially. And rather than eliminating all instances of Kang throughout the multiverse, they're probably eliminated all the instances of Loki throughout the multiverse to ensure that he is not an obstacle to Kang. Or they could flip this where there's an ultimate Loki and he's behind the TVA, taking the place of Kang the Conqueror. So either way, we're going to find out next week if there's an ultimate evil Loki that's behind the TVA, you know, trying to eliminate all the instances of Loki, so this one Loki could rule at the end of time and he ends up with Renslayer, or it's going to be Kang and it's the same scenario. Either way, next week we'll know if Kang the Conqueror is the big bad of Loki, or if it's an Loki taking the place of Kang in this sort of storyline, you know. Personally, I'm pulling for Kang the Conqueror, because Kang the Conqueror is Nathaniel Richards, you know, a descendant of the Fantastic Four, and this would lead into a future Fantastic Four movie. What we've got now, what this show's done, is it's given us all kinds of multiverse action. So the multiverse is going to be dealt with in multiple movies in Phase 4. Introducing Kang the Conqueror here positions him as a future villain for the Fantastic Four movie, which will be the last movie of Phase 4 of Marvel. So that is my theory right there. I'm pulling for Kang the Conqueror. It could also be a Loki taking on the guise of Kang the Conqueror, which would be funny, but I'm not really expecting that to happen, you know. But we'll see, you know. So far, it's all the signs are pointing to Kang the Conqueror. You know, Alioth is Kang the Conqueror's guard dog. Jadren Slayer's his wife. I'm just saying, Kang the Conqueror seems all but confirmed at this point. I would be excited to see it. We see the statue looks like fucking Kang the Conqueror, so I don't know. And all the end things end with that one shot of the fragmented statue that looks exactly like Kang the Conqueror. So that's my theory at the moment. I'm really excited. I also like the one, the Journey into Mystery title nod, because that's the name of the comic book, where Thor and Loki all debuted, and fits the bill nicely. And there was also a really good scene with Loki and Sylvie kind of sharing a blanket and snuggling and deciding if they survive this, maybe they'll find a way together. It's not super romantic, but it's close as romantic as we kind of gotten so far. So we'll see where it goes. Next week is the series finale, so we might even do like a live chat for that one. I haven't decided, but I think that might be the way to go. But if you enjoyed this review, feel free to leave some comments. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and we will be back next week with more Loki. Talk to you later, guys.